When you first load the optimizer, you're presented with the player pool. Now, there are a number of ways that you can set your player pool, but my recommendation, what I believe is the most efficient way to do it, is to go over here, set max exposure. So that's the most you're willing to allow each player to be in your lineups. So for example, if I moved CeeDee Lamb down to 50, this would now mean that he cannot appear in more than 50% of the lineups that I generate. What I think is the most efficient way to do this is to actually go in, set global max exposure to 0 for all of these positions. Override all existing exposures. Now, this is something you should do if you want to be very particular about your exposures and about who is in your player pool. If you don't have any strong convictions about most guys and you're kind of okay with anybody being your lineup if the optimizer recommends so, then you can just leave everybody at 100%, or you can set everybody at 100% if it doesn't load that way. But for me, I like to set everybody at 0, and now I'm going to go one by one and select the players that I want. So if I am comfortable with CeeDee Lamb, I might say, okay, I want him, or I don't have a limit on how much I'm okay with him being in there. Same with Tyreek Hill, but I like Tyreek Hill so much that I want at least 33% of him. If I leave this blank, it might give me no CeeDee Lamb. If I put a number in here, now it's going to give me at least 33%, no more than 100%. Now maybe Justin Jefferson, I think I don't want him to not be in my lineups, but I want to make sure I don't get too much of him. So I'm going to leave him at 10%. So on and so forth. You can do this throughout the entire player pool. You can go position by position, etc. Now, from there, let's talk about what all of these other numbers are actually telling you. So first, as you see, we have team, opponent, venue, over, under, spread, implied points. These are all just game environment numbers, team and game info you see at the top. Projected points is our projection from FTN Fantasy, but you can use this user projection if you would like. Now, another thing here, we have this special DVOA adjusted fantasy points against matchup number for each player. So as you go through the projections, we do incorporate this stuff to a degree, but it's really difficult to properly adjust certain projections. So if you think that, hey, you know what, this is a really phenomenal matchup for Tyreek Hill, maybe at plus 18% in the matchup, maybe 21.7 isn't quite enough. So you can go all the way up to 23. Now, one thing I will say about this, there are 3 ways in which you can increase the amount of a player that you are getting. So let's say you do a run, you only get 15% of Tyreek Hill, and you say, okay, I want at least 30%. There are 3 different ways that you can accomplish this. Number 1, you can edit the player's projection. Just raise it. Number 2, you can use this little boost arrow on the right-hand side. If I go up, that's now going to give me more Tyreek Hill. The third way, as we already alluded to, is min exposure. My recommendation is to use minimum exposure before you change user projections, before you use the boost. And the reason why I say that is because if you don't adjust the projection, now when you go into the build settings, and we're not going to talk too much about build settings here, but when you go into build settings, you can use this ceilings projection blend a lot easier if you are using min exposure and not editing the baseline projection. From there, we have our GPP score. Again, the GPP score is probably the number one thing that you want to pay attention to when setting your player pool. If you're not sure what the GPP scores tell you, the super Spark Notes version is positive numbers are good, negative numbers are bad. The higher the positive number, the better. The lower the negative number, the worse. For more, check out the GPP scores tutorial. But you can use the GPP scores to set a lot of these exposures. So for example, you would see Josh Allen with the highest GPP score on the sheet, and you would say, okay, I want to make sure that I have a lot of Josh Allen. I want to make sure that I'm way over the field. The field has 7.2%. It's the best GPP score. So I'm going to say Josh Allen in at least 25% of my lineups. That's all you got to do. It's very simple. That's how you create your player pool. And from there, you then go in to build settings, but that's for a different tutorial.